You are listening to the Sacred Pathways podcast, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. I am your host and co-journer, Sydney Searchwell Simpson, and I am thrilled to walk this journey with you. Bismillah. Let us begin. Ah. Oh, so hi, Robin.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Um, Robin, you said you're currently in Santa Barbara.
hmm
And Robin is at this point about 9 days away from completing a 1,600-mile walk along the Pacific Coast Highway. And this just seems to be one of the many, many journeys that Robin has walked in his life in order to be of service to humanity, to be in service to the earth, to be in service to animals. And I really just want to talk about your journey, this physical journey that you've been walking over the past almost 6 months now, right?
Yeah, today's day 162, I think.
Yeah.
So 5.5 months-ish.
Wow, look at that. And also, oh, oops, accident. I forgot to record this on my phone, but now we're recording on my phone too. Um, and then I want to talk a bit about that, but then also this process of becoming you, like becoming who it is that you are, because as you're sharing now in your truth series, there has been an internal journey as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of want to dive in first on right now. And at the end of this journey, you've decided that you're going to give everything away, all of your
Mm.
possessions, your clothes. And this has been a thing that you've been practicing over the walk. And in your blog, you mentioned that you're becoming a man who owns nothing.
Mm.
And I'm very curious about the process, the inspiration, and learnings, but I want to know what really inspired you to walk this path of becoming a man who owns nothing.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so we could go back a little ways to, in 2011, I was living a fairly typical US American lifestyle in that I was very focused on material possessions and financial wealth. I got my self-worth from outside of me, from how I was perceived by society, from how my life compared to what I saw on TV. And I had a goal at the age of 25 of being a millionaire. By the time I was 30, I would be out shining the wheels, the rims on my car every Sunday. And I was living a fairly materialistic oriented lifestyle. And at the same time, I have been connected to the earth from my very youth. I've always been in love with the earth, and I've always spent a lot of time outside. And, in college, I thought I was kind of the environmental one because I would switch our light bulbs out to being LED bulbs. Well, actually, back then it was CFL bulbs. And, I would put in a low flow water user on our shower and recycle the beer cans and the beer bottles at the parties. And so I had thought I was kind of living an environmental life. Um, and what happened was in 2011, I started to watch some documentaries and read some books. And what I learned is that the way that I was living was a part of systems of incredible destruction and exploitation. Every single thing that I was doing, the food that I was eating, the car that I was driving, the gas I was pumping into my car, the stuff that I was buying, the trash that I was creating, the money that I was spending, everything that I was doing was a part of these massive systems of destruction and exploitation. And that me meeting my needs, my desires, was actually at the expense or the burden of my global neighbors, the plants and animals we share this home with, and our interconnected, system of life here on Earth, our ecosystems. And so I just learned that my whole life was a lie that had been sold to me by these corporations, that had been kind of somewhat forced upon me, I would say, by this mainstream narrative. And I decided that I wasn't going to live that life anymore and that I wanted to take my life back and I set out to transform my life from there.
Yeah. To have that experience of like really awakening to even when you were making these very, conscious decisions of like, okay, yeah, like I'll choose this because it uses less electricity, to really understand how intertwined and how deep the roots these systems of exploitation in, how
Mhm.
we build our lives. And we're also like trained to build our lives in a way that is very complicit with it. I mean, I could imagine pure disillusionment, pure
Mhm.
like shock.
Yeah.
Um, do you remember if you had any fears?
Yeah, it was definitely I was about 25 at the time, and the interesting thing is that I was happy, I was healthy, I was loving my life, but I wasn't willing to continue to love my life at the expense of others. And so it was a big wake up because I realized I had to I'm not going to say had to. It was a choice. I chose to, but it was like there was no choice. It was like I want to change my life, and my life is a lie. So yes, there was some deep pits in my stomach, some definitely some real struggle. However, for the most part, I was inspired and I was excited. And the reason why is because as I was watching these documentaries and reading these books, I learned that although there's all these problems, that there's different ways to do things. They were sharing the solutions, and these solutions were exciting: growing food, foraging, um, you know, finding more wholeness and completeness within through a relationship to our body, community connections, being outside more. It was a deep sense of like this ability to explore and to expand. And so, as much as I felt this doom and gloom, that was a fraction compared to the inspiration and the excitement that I had for taking my life back. And I've always been in the truth. I've always been into truth. I was just deluded enough. They got me. And then it was like, well, now I know. And I'm going to pursue this path of truth and integrity. So that was it from the beginning. It was, you had wanting to be a human that lives in harmony with other humans, wanting to be a human that lives in connection to the earth and doesn't destroy it, but also that just seeking of overcoming these lies that have been sold and coming into a place of truth.
Totally, totally. What I love hearing about your experience and walking alongside or walking forward with the fear and with the inspiration is it allowed you to explore that there were multiple solutions. There wasn't just like one fixed route of like the way that we're gonna, build a world and live lives free of over 500 years of disconnect. It's not in one thing. There's actually a multitude of ways. That can be really, really empowering when we tap into that remembrance that we have choice. Um, so that's incredibly profound. Um, yeah, you mentioned foraging. I know that that's something that you had done. One of the ways in which you've walked forward in this path of truth and integrity is you spent a year of your life foraging all of your food. That was you letting go of your detachment to the industrial food system that's polluting the earth, that's polluting our bodies, that's harmful to the animals and the plant life that it really depends upon. And you've also done like a bunch of other things over the past 2011. So, oh my gosh, 14 years. Um, Such as letting go of your bank account, saving cell phone, and up to like your government ID. And so it seems like this internal and external journey that you walk to learn what it is to walk in truth and in integrity and learn how it is to live in a way that is free from system exploitations. Letting go has just been a constant process. Um, and right now you're walking with all of the possessions that you own. And that's, I think, 44, if I remember correctly, at this moment.
44 was some years back. I had got my life down to 44. Right now, it's probably more like 100-ish.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, as mentioned, you're letting go at the end of this walk of all of your physical possessions, but this process of becoming free, of living in truth integrity, seems to be also a lot about letting go of your emotional attachments, social, historical, whether that's personal history attachments or even just like a larger collective history of inheritance. Um, and so, what are some of the attachments that this outer pilgrimage, this walk that you've been walking, has compelled you to identify and let go of? And then my other question is also about the internal. What are some of the internal attachments that you've had to let go of?
Yeah, and with that, I want to mention. So when I, started on this journey 13 years ago, it was to take my life back one step at a time, and a lot of those were simple things like ditching paper towels and using a washable cloth, for example, or starting to buy local food at the farmer's market rather than going to Walmart and things like that. Riding my bike more, driving the car less. So it was a lot of small changes to start, but there was also from the very beginning stage, it was like, all right, small changes aren't going to cut it because what I realized is in my entire life was woven into this web of consumerism, this web of destruction. And so what I had to do was one step at a time, take my life back, which I did by snipping each of these strands and then replacing them with new strands. And so a lot of those were small things, but very quickly it was like, if I'm going to live a life of deep integrity and an actual harmony with the earth, we're talking about having to totally question everything, rethink everything, change my every way of being for the most part with this earth and with others. And so a lot of that is physical. It was getting rid of things, simplifying, downsizing. But if we don't do the inner work, we're not going to get very far because most of our material possessions are a reflection of our inner self. Most of the stuff we have now, of course, we have things that are like, you want clothes to be warm. But when you really look at this huge closet of clothes that I had, I didn't just need to be warm. It was my way of proving that I was a meaningful person, saying, look, I'm special. I'm somebody by my clothes, by my car, by my stuff. And so in order to shed the materialism and the consumerism, the way to really do that is to shed the attachments in my mind. So letting go of societal norms, letting go of an attachment to being necessarily liked, an attachment to the mainstream accepting me, to the people around, accepting me. And so there was, it's been a long journey of letting go of attachments and letting go of things needing to be a certain way because the earth does things in a very different way from the way modern humanity has designed things. Or not modern humanity, the dominator thread of modern humanity was designed things. So it's been a long journey of letting go and then, coming up on when I get to Los Angeles, how I'm going to get rid of everything that I own. Well, the only reason that I can do that is because I've let go of so much in here. That's the reason that I'm able to let go of the physical.
I do want to know too if there's like a specific attachment that you found really challenged you. Because I want to say this, I absolutely love the fact that you shared how it began. Little things like, okay, I'm no longer going to like shop at Walmart. I'm going to, start to grow my own food. And I think that those are really practical changes that people can start to make in their lives. But when we're talking about radical change, which seems to be the change that is necessary for the times that we're living in, change that completely shatters the status quo. I mean, what is an attachment that you specifically had a lot of challenge to? Because I know on this journey I'm
Yeah.
also had to face a lot of attachments.
Mm.
One of them too is you mentioned this being accepted or liked by the dominator culture.
I think that's still a big one for me. One of my main attachments is still how I'm perceived by society. Even though I'm not going to get that need met by, like, I'm not willing to be perceived by society as a good person if, or a special person by taking advantage of others. But I'm still in this place where a lot of my acting is coming from a place of ego. It's coming from a place of wanting to be somebody, wanting to be somebody special, wanting to be successful. And so there's still elements that needs to dissolve away of that. And that's an interesting place to be because I'm dedicating so much of my life to being of service. Great. But there's still ego that plays a role in that. And so the balance for me is this. If you can if you can overcome and work with your ego in a way where your actions are actually of service to people, but you're still operating from a place of ego, that's something to celebrate. You know, it's like most of us are never going to fully ascend our egos, but if we can make sure that we're not using our ego in a way that harms others and actually is truly of service, then that's something to celebrate. Now, a lot of people will use their ego to, like, because one of the best things you can do is be a philanthropist, you know, be a giving person, be a loving person. But the problem is when that's operated from a place of ego first and foremost, then you have philanthropists and nonprofits that are actually contributing to the problem rather than the solution because they're not actually here for the problem. They're here for their own self-worth and to look good in society. So first step is controlling and reining in the ego in a way where it's actually of service and not detrimental. The next level, which is a much harder level to get to, is to dissolve the ego. My thought is that if you dissolve your ego completely, you will fall into being a full servant. Because once you no longer have an ego, that once you're no longer focused on yourself, you're going to focus on the greater good. So that's the ultimate place to get to, is to dissolve the ego away completely. But that takes decades. You know, who can expect to do that in their 20s or, you know, in their 30s? That takes time. So I would say, yeah, I still have an attachment to my identity, to my ego, and I'm doing a substantial amount of work to shed that and overcome it, but it's still substantially there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think even the willingness to admit that that's a part of the process, because I know if you are someone within the public eye, I mean, it's just like extra. We all have this idea of who it is that you are. And again, if we have the past impressions of our training under systems of domination, like, oh, like this is a space for me to be seen, and that's really grounded in that ego that doesn't feel whole, that doesn't feel connected to life, you know, and that begins to take control of your actions. That is, like you said, when we see a lot more pain and suffering in this world, even if that pain and suffering is not intentional. Um, and I imagine too, uh, there has been also a process of looking at your ego, the ego that was formed in order to survive and make sense of the domination culture that you were, you know, raised within. One of the things I know I've been meditating a lot about is how the domination culture, the domination consciousness really creates the stage for us to become very attached to untruths, like things that are untrue about ourselves, things that are untrue about other people, things that are untrue about life. um and it'll tell us like, this is who you are, this is who you have to be, this is who other people are, and this is how you have to be in relationship to each other depending on where you fit within this domination construct, you know, whether you are white or black or indigenous or like male or female or trans, like all of these attachments to um identities that we ultimately form and solidify in order to survive here. There is a question here. Yeah. um And that sort of like reminds me a bit about now your truth series, where you are showing up and you're sharing everything that you have and everything that you are, your past, what folks might label or judge and call like the pretty, the ugly, all of it. Um, and how your past exists within a larger social context. Actually, in watching those videos, it really seemed like you are sharing this is who Robin is, and this is who I was trained to be, and this is who it is that I am in this moment. And so, as you walk this path of healing and liberation and connection, and using that path in service to everything, to the whole of life, I'm curious about why this truth series is a part of the path of healing and liberation from this domination culture. Um, yeah.
Well, most all of us are all guarding things. We're all hiding things. We're all embarrassed about what's really going. Some of our actions. We're embarrassed about our thoughts. Oh, if they knew what I was thinking, ooh, the shame, the guilt, and so on. And so I think that today some really powerful things are transparency. If you look at our leadership, if you look at our corporations, if you look at our political situation, if everybody was fully transparent, I think most of our problems would cease, because it's the hiding that allows all of this exploitation and destruction to continue. So if we were all transparent, that would be one of the characteristics in which would transform our humanity. Truth, just being honest about things. Like, you look at the commercials, and if every commercial was required to be true, if every box, every food label was required to be true, like that would just simply, and not even required to, it just was true. Like, that would transform everything. Billions, trillions of unnecessary dollars, all this resources, none of it. We wouldn't need any of it. And so, we have been taught basically to be incomplete, to believe that we need all these products. We need all of this in order to be whole, to be loved, to be lovable, etc. And I am of the belief that each of us as individuals are whole and complete human beings just as we are. And however, for me, the more that I'm holding back, the more that I'm guarding, the more that I'm hiding, the less likely I am ever to be able to come to that whole and complete place. For me, truth is healing. And the other thing that I'm practicing is integrity. And to come from a place of complete integrity means not hiding things, not being ashamed, not guarding. Authenticity and is so important. Like, again, if every human was just authentic, what a world we would live in if we were just ourselves. We didn't need to pretend to be something other than we are. And so for me to go to the very depths of this is to release everything that I've ever guarded or hid, like to share, like, these are the things that I've done that I'm not proud of. These are the things that were not in my integrity. These are my areas of shame. And just put it out there and say, this is me. I'm a human being. That's deeply healing, to have nothing to guard and nothing to hide. And then at the same time, it's an opportunity for me to show others, like, we can just be ourselves. Look, we are all our thoughts, our actions. The truth is this, that we've all done things. We've all said things. We've all thought things that we feel mourning over, that we feel sadness over, that we feel grief over. And if we can release those things, that we can connect more. A lot of our disconnection is hiding from one another. What if we didn't have to hide from each other anymore? So this for me, as of just a few days ago, I have officially released everything inside of me. I have no secrets. I am a human being where you can ask me literally anything and I will tell you the truth. I'm not hiding anything. this video series that I did on YouTube, which, it's just, I just want to clarify. It's like I'm a human being who's speaking, and I just used YouTube as a way to share it. It's not about a YouTube series. It's not about videos. It's just that was the medium in which I could share the depth of myself. Um, so I shared it all in there, and it's probably like 6 hours, and some of it is deeply painful, and some of it is very, very funny.
It's
and
whole.
I still feel very tender, and I'm not fully healed, but I've done a lot of healing, my sexual past, that's an area where bringing up some of those things was like, did I do this right? Like, it's there's definitely like still struggles, and I'm not past it. There's still healing to do, but boy, have I healed a lot. And the last thing I'll share on that is that reading the comments, a lot of people have felt healing through it as well, because they can see, wow, I can just be myself. You're telling me I can just be myself. That's the last thing that these corporations want, is a bunch of humans who are just happy with being themselves and accept themselves and accept the others as who they are.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with all of that, I really think one of the reasons why I think people hide as a person who has hidden before,
Yeah.
uh is yeah, this like fear that there is like, yeah, the shame, there's something inherently wrong with me. And even just like bringing this back to the domination culture and systems of domination. I mean, we have a bunch of systems that actually depend upon people operating from this core belief of there's something wrong with who it is that I am. And I know that when we're operating within that space, it's very natural for us to also start to project that onto other people. And then that's when we get into a world that's filled with judgment. And then it starts to become, so in some ways it's a monster that recreates itself over and over, because then it starts to become a question of, will I be safe to be myself?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when I was watching your Truth Series videos, I found it a personal practice, and I highly recommend for folks who are watching the Truth Series videos to use it as an opportunity of self-observation, of like self-study of how it is that you respond to someone who is showing up in total transparency, and the ideas that you might have as this person, and how that might be limiting your capacity to really, really receive full truth outside of those judgments that feel so comfortable and feel so easy. It feels so easy to be like, you are this and that's that. But watching your video, especially the one about your sexual past, I found myself like, this is going to be a good practice for me to just observe the ways in which I respond to the truth of a whole human being who is willing to share vulnerably, who's willing to share courageously things I may or may not like, but it's beyond liking or disliking. It's about what is.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the judgment aspect. For me, one of my goals is to get to a place of non-judgment. The only way that I can get to a place of non-judgment is if I don't judge myself. It's those of us who judge ourselves the most that judge others the most.
Absolutely.
Fred Rogers is, Mr. Rogers, one of the things he's really known for saying is, I like you just the way you are. And that's what I want. I want to love people just the way they are. I have to like and love myself just the way that I am. And that means accepting myself and releasing the things that I've felt that shame and guilt over. Well, I don't feel too much shame or guilt, but mourning, sadness, just, anguish, that's a really important aspect of it. Another thing that I want to share is that, for example, one thing I share in there is that I have pooped in the ocean. And as a person who cares about the ocean and our environment, you don't poop in the ocean, right? You don't poop in the water. That pollutes the water.
Right.
So it's like not something I want to share with people. However, every one of us has pooped in the water. We
Mhm.
just don't acknowledge it. So anybody who's taken a cruise ship, all of their poops went into the water. All of them. And I've never done a cruise, but I poop directly in the water. And then anybody who uses a flush toilet, I was reading a newspaper article back in Florida some years back,
Mhm.
and it said 4 million gallons of raw sewage flushed into the river. And then under it,
Mhm.
it said third largest spill in like a few years. And that's our poop going right into the rivers and oceans.
Yeah.
In all of the cities across the country, when we're using flush toilets, there's a good chance that some of the times our poops have made it into the lakes, the rivers, the oceans, etc. So here's the big thing is that the way that our lives are designed, every single one of us takes part in systems of mass lies every
Mhm.
day where we're not what we say we are. In our food, our water, our energy, our waste, our transportation, none of us are who we say we are. I'm just willing to say, I am who I say I am. And that is a person who has done all these things, which are ridiculous. But the truth is every darn one of us has done just as many ridiculous things. Like I shared about my lack of consensuality in some of my early relationships when I was a boy who hadn't even ever heard the word consensual yet, who was watching movies like American Pie. That's deep and it's painful. But where did your iPhone come from? Like, literally, there are people jumping out of buildings, killing themselves because of the misery that our consumerism is creating. So, like, we're all, like, so many of us have people working in prison to make our clothes. So it's like, I'm just willing to be truthful, but there's so few people. If most people, if they were really truthful about every action that they have, they would probably be shattered. It's a shattering reality to acknowledge the truth of our actions in these global, this globalized system. So it's a tough place to be a fully transparent human in a world where we live in such systems that hide the truth behind our actions. And I'll just say, I'm taking full responsibility for my actions. I'm not saying in any way through this that anyone else is to blame.
Mhm.
I'm fully, I'm taking full responsibility, but I'm also context is important. We got to talk about context with these sorts of things.
We have to, because I think even the context gives us an understanding to look at, yeah, the context we all exist in. And you said something earlier and just now too about how much our world would change and shift if the systems, whether that's education, government, business, corporations, just had to be completely transparent about here are the materials that make the iPhone that we give every new year. Like every year, we come up with a new iPhone.
Yeah.
Here are where your clothes are made. Like here, your clothes are made from um, child labor, essentially enslavement. In like Sri Lanka or Indonesia. All of these things that hide that again, these like systems and structures hide, and they hide because if they were to reveal it, I feel like humanity, and we see this happening now with what we see happening with cobalt in the Congo, but humanity would then have to make a decision themselves around, can I tolerate this with my values? Can I continue to buy a new iPhone every year,
Yeah.
knowing that there is, a child who's losing fingers and toes in order for me to have this iPhone? Can I continue to invest in these like large, multinational corporations or like food systems that are making farmers sick because of the pesticides that they make them dependent on, because it is
Yeah.
less financially risky? It's like a mirror. Truth acts like a bit of a mirror where people will have to sort of, if we come to really look at the systems that we have um, become very comfortable in, can we face that mirror and decide what it is to do next? And that's sort of like what I love about your story. Um, is that you saw the mirror, you saw the disconnect between what the mirror showed you and who you felt you were at the core of your being and what you felt was real at the core of life. And you decided to go in.
Yeah, I've kind of decided that my job is just to exist in the highest state of integrity that I can, to
Mhm.
pursue, truth. And I'm not talking about my side versus your side. There are no sides here. I
Mhm.
see every human being, like even the CEO of, a fossil fuel corporation. It's a guy who had a little boy, who has a little boy still inside him, wanting to be loved, we're all human beings, and I'm really into just dedicating my life to this experiment of truth and integrity. Mahatma Gandhi is one of my biggest inspirations. I saw what he did by living a very examined life and his experiments in truth, and he's been a big inspiration for me for a long time. In in his autobiography, he talks about how the last 13 years of his life, there was nothing left to write because everybody knew everything. There was no internal personal person. It was just, he was just a servant. And that's where I want to get to. And I still have a lot of work to do. But at the heart of it, I think that integrity and truth and transparency are three of the key practices to get to that place. And so this is me giving an attempt. I didn't do everything right with the Truth and Transparency series. I'm a human who's just really trying to do my best in a world where it's very hard to do. Like, how do you do everything exactly right? But I'm pursuing that, and I'm happy to be on this path. I'm celebrating where I am. It's easy to get down on ourselves, but I celebrate all of us for being here. Like every single one of us that's listening to this podcast right now, we can celebrate that we're listening to this instead of what we could have, like all the other things we could be filling our mind with. But this is what we're filling our mind with. That's something to celebrate. Every moment we can celebrate ourselves and lift each other up, and that's one of my practices, is gratitude and celebration of life.
Yes. And it's beautiful because I see you and all other beings who are known or unknown have that at the center, a celebration of life, a deep connection to life. And they're like, all right, I'm here to celebrate my life. I'm here to celebrate life with that gift of life I've been given, and witnessing that same life energy wherever it is that you go, and in the person that you love, and the person you've been taught to hate, and the person that you've been taught is wrong, and all of, like, it's all one shared energy. I mean, it expands beyond humans. One thing I want to ask you, oh, if you want to say something, please go.
Great.
um, this is an emerging question, and it really speaks to what you had shared around, the person who is uh, the CEO of this extractive oil company and being able to see beyond the mask
Yeah.
that this person is operating in. And when I think a lot about dominator consciousness, and this is one of the things that really woke me up to the sense of, it's not just the simplification of there are oppressed and oppressors, but really understanding, I'm like, wait, these people who are operating in more explicit ways of disconnection can only operate from that point because they've become so disconnected
Yeah.
from themselves and from a deeper truth of life. And like tapping into that sense of compassion. One of the things that, and on my own journey, that I have as a constant practice is seeing that disconnect, not in a way of making excuses, but being able to see that disconnect and to still operate from a point of truth of awareness of the love at the core of that human being, truth of awareness of interconnectedness. Like, if me putting that person, putting the CEO of some oil company into a box, or putting, even someone as disconnected as Donald Trump into a box, is not actually serving
Yeah.
liberation.
Yeah.
which we're all seeking. And so I'm wondering, because when I was interviewing you, I think, 2 years ago, if we did this interview, I would have been filled with this ideas of like, oh, like on this podcast around liberation and finding a way forward in life, like my first guest is going to be someone who is like a total representative of dominator culture, a white male. But it's so beautiful because today I'm witnessing a human being who's in this body, is in a white and male bodied, but there's something, there's something just emerging more about how to see beyond the mask that dominator consciousness constantly validates and builds consequences upon, which, helps validates it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and tapping into the core. What has that process looked like for you as someone that people might have and still might be like, oh, whatever, like, what does this, white man have to say about XYZ?
Yeah, it is a really, I really am glad to be speaking about this, Sydney, because this is, you look at the movement for liberation and justice, and often we don't have quite open enough minds. Often we do a lot of labeling and judging. And if hatred was going to solve things, then I would be right there in the deepest level of hatred. But I don't think hatred is going to solve things. I don't think it's going to move us. If our objective is liberation of humanity, if our objective is equity, if our objective is restoring our earth, then I don't think hatred is what's going to get us there. I think acting from the deepest place of truth and acceptance and love is what's going to get us there. It's an interesting thing. Like, yeah, as you see, I am a white man. And so there's part of me that feels uncomfortable talking about these things. However, the thing is that's very clear to me is that in these systems of domination, the dominator, which in some ways is me, being a white man who has benefited from the dominator society in many ways and who has a lot of privilege, most of the privileges out there. That the reality, though, is that I am also the dominated in this society. And I can look and I can see that the oppressor in this system is also oppressed. Nobody is really free under these systems. You look at the depression rates, the anxiety rates, the extreme overwhelm. The reality is that white men are not thriving, happy, healthy human beings so much. They are miserable. And then you have to look like, sure, white men have had such a great level of benefit overall. Like these systems built upon the enslavement of millions of people stolen away from Africa, built upon the genocide of millions of indigenous people here. This is the actions primarily of white men. And so, but white men do not know how to express their emotions, have a relationship with women that's healing and healthy, have a relationship with other men, understand themselves, express themselves, release. Like white men are suffering also under these systems, and it's very important. I think if we're going to heal as a humanity, we have to be able to see that if we're going to heal, we have to heal the white man too, which almost sounds like comical for me to say. And I would think a lot of people would just be like, cancel. Like this white man talking about healing white men, like cancel him. But the white man has to heal if we're going to heal our society, because he's only going to keep dominating if he thinks that's how he's going to meet his needs. So that's what I'm talking about. It's holistic. And that's why I think it's so important to talk about. And I write about this in depth at robingreenfield.org/privilege. That's where I like really deep dive into like my relationship to privilege. And then at robingreenfield.org/racial bias, that's where I talk about my racial biases. And I think we need a lot more just open, honest, vulnerable communication around.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I appreciate what you share around the open heart and open mind that is necessary for walking a path of true, 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 true liberation. Because this right now, with the state of the world, with the state of our relationships between humans, with the earth, with animals, with the land, we need that revolutionary, radical unrooting. And part of that, I think, also comes from understanding that the healing that people who receive the most privileges from domination consciousness, their healing starts also with healing themselves from domination consciousness. But you can't heal from that until you acknowledge it, until you're willing to see it, until you're willing to unlearn all that you have been taught of, like, my value is based on me being better than, more powerful than, XYZ.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, what a time to be alive.
It is a time to be alive. It's a daunting time to be alive for many of us. But for those of us that are on a path of integrity and truth, it's an exciting time to be alive. If we can take responsibility for our own actions, wow, do we ever have a time that's, an opportunity.
Exactly.
So it's an exciting time to be alive. I'm not negating the real challenge that we have and the challenge that we have ahead of us. But for a truth seeker and for someone who wants to contribute positively to society, it's a time to be alive.
Right. Yeah. I have one last question. I think all great journeys are journeys that bring us deeper into ourselves. And when we get deep enough within ourselves, we can get to a deeper truth that's just like threaded in all of life and through all life forms. And so you can answer from a place of truth and integrity, wherever this journey, whatever journey speaks most to your heart with this question. But what has been your most, or not even your most, what has been a very profound learning on this journey that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah. Yeah, the profoundness of some of what I've been learning and really tapping into is a little hard to share because we have been so disconnected that a lot of people like judge concepts of interconnectedness as sort of just woo woo. And like the other thing is that we need a new language. The dominator language isn't going to get us forward, and so that means speaking in a different way from what even a lot of the people living in the alternative scene are used to. And so it's, I still feel a little timid just being fully open and honest. But on this trip, this walk from Canada to Los Angeles, for me, it's the feeling that I'm a part of this earth, that I'm not separate from, that I belong here, that I'm at home here, that I am connected with everything. I heard someone that I learned from, Mark Boyle, said this. It's like you go to the river, which I swim in the lakes and the rivers and oceans so much on this trip. Let's say you go to a river and you scoop up a cup of water, scoop up a handful of water. Is that water you? It's in your hands. Not really at that point is it necessarily you. You put it in your mouth. You haven't swallowed it. Is it you? You swallow it. It's in your stomach. Is it you? It enters your veins. It's flowing through your veins. Is it you? You pee it out back onto the land. Is it you? And the answer is that yes, it's always you, that we are not separate from. That's a perfect example to see, like, where is the separation? When is it you and when is it not you? And I've really been able to get to this place where I can say, I don't feel separate anymore. I am a part of this earth. I'm an animal of this earth. I'm a being of this earth. The earth is me and I am the earth. And there's pollutants running through those systems, and those pollutants are running through me. I am a part of that as well. So I've definitely been coming into a place of just much more interconnectedness and feeling a part of it all. And then as far as, when I get to Los Angeles in about 10 days and I get rid of everything and I enter this experiment of non-ownership, that's going to be my opportunity to take things to the next level. Like, I literally am going to own nothing, no computer, no clothes. I'll have to borrow an item or two to like cover my body, but I will just be existing as part of the earth much more so. And uh, it's going to take things to the next level. And last little note I'll share on that is I'm really working on making the sky my best friend, and I think the sky is open to it. I think that they're open to me, to us being best friends. They have many best friends, me being one of them. But on this walk, I've thought about it. It's, yeah, what if the sky was your best friend? You would never be alone, whether you're in Glacier National Park or in downtown Los Angeles. The sky is going to be one of my best friends, and that creates this wholeness and this completeness and this belonging, and that's a big part of the journey.
That's so beautiful. I can see the joy in your eyes. I could see like that sense of almost like, yeah, like your soul is just like, yes,
Yeah, at
finally
home.
at home.
Yeah, Ram
Mhm.
Dass has been a big teacher of mine this year, and that's one of the things that he talks about is just being at home inside of ourselves. And I
Mhm.
really am. I really am. And this coming into truth and transparency has played a role in just, I'm home inside of myself.
And I think that when you find that home inside of yourself, you are able to really understand your place in like the larger story of things unfolding. When I think of oneness and what you were sharing of how it's all one, the breath moving through my lungs and that of like the frog who's sharing this river with me, it's all
Mm,
one. I think about all of the multiple stories that are unfolding in life. And when we come to know who it is we are at the very core, we've come to know something about the larger universe, this mysterious, magic, infinite, expression of life.
yeah.
And things just flow. And so I'm hoping and I'm trusting and I have no doubt in the universe that when you arrive in LA and whatever follows after that, it'll deepen that experience of oneness. And
Yeah.
hopefully whoever you meet on that path can experience that, because it's one thing to speak about it, and it's a whole nother thing to have the experience that sparks you into, your own journey.
Yeah. And anybody who's out there listening, I welcome you to come visit me. I'll be in Griffith Park primarily.
Nice.
I'm starting off by doing a 10-day walking tour, but then I'll be mostly in Griffith Park. And I have a schedule on my website, robingreenfield.org/non-ownership. And I'm doing a lot of community events. We're going to do compassionate communication practice. I'll teach some foraging classes, group singing and healing, mindfulness walks, meditation, and then I'll be giving some talks as well. So for about 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, Griffith Park is my classroom where I'm both the teacher and the student there with you. So for anyone in Los Angeles, I welcome you to come take part in this experiment with me.
Yes, yes. Please, please do. I wish I could, but I'm there in spirit.
Yeah.
I one final opening, if you have any final guidance you want to share with our listeners who are walking their own path of truth, in this time where we have to face so many untruths and the disconnect they've created amongst all of life, like what would that be?
Hmm. There's so much.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, what's alive for me is taking it one step at a time. Starting with what you're really excited about. What are you really excited about? Are you excited about connecting with the plants? Are you excited about reducing the amount of trash you're creating? Are you excited about volunteering with a community organization? What's really alive in you? Start with that. Don't start with what you're dreading. Start with what's really alive in you, and the thing that you used to be dreading might end up feeling alive as you are continuing down this path. So, one step at a time, liberate yourself. Make goals, be organized. Take the time to write out your goals and what you're going to do this week and next week. And continue to celebrate your successes, your little ones and your big ones. And I could just keep on going, so I'll just call it there.
It's okay. And yeah, all of the links that Robin has mentioned, I will include in the show notes. And you'll find all of the updates, dear listeners, when you go to the show notes on his blog, on his website, on his YouTube, and you might even just encounter him.
Yeah.
How life works. You might even just encounter him. Robin, thank you so, so dearly for being courageous to walk your path of truth and sharing it in a way that is already benefiting all of life. I'm so grateful to walk this path with you. So
Well,
grateful.
I'm so grateful too. As you know, when we first connected about a year or so ago, or 2 years ago now, I always felt a really sweet connection with you, and always thought we would continue the connection going. And what a joy that we get to share our connection together with
Yeah,
everybody here, because we have a sweet vibe going between us, and I'm really glad that we get to bring that out to people. So thanks for making this happen.
so am I. So am I. All right, folks. Until next time.
All right.
If you are interested in sharing your heart path story, art, or in sharing a paradigm shifting conversation on the podcast, you can find the application in the show notes or the description bar. There you will also find links to join our community on Substack, where I share personal and emergent audios related to the episode themes and my personal process of living and being another way. Come engage and connect with other listeners and co-journers in the gatherings and conversations held only on Substack. You can also find the link to my website, Jivan Mukta Healing, to learn more about the work that I do to be of service to the world at this time. Until then, I wish you and your beloveds peace and presence on the path and journey. Connect soon. Thank you for listening to Sacred Pathways, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. As a budding show, I would be incredibly grateful if you supported this podcast by giving us a rating, sharing this or any other episode with your loved ones in person and online, and letting me know in the comment section below how this episode resonated with you. Engagement is lovingly received and appreciated if you have received value from this. See you next time.